So Tom mentioned the Great Turning, and I've used this as a conceptual framework for my PhD, where I'm looking at the transition movement, which is about building resilience in local communities in the face of climate change, peak oil and economic disruption. So the Great Turning has been conceptualised by Joanna Macy as a way of understanding that the time that we're in. She calls it a compass and a lens. So a compass for seeing the direction we may be moving in towards a life-sustaining society, and a lens for understanding the multitude of actions and groups that are working towards change in our world. So she divides it into 3 dimensions. She describes holding actions as activism, direct action, boycotts, legislative action that stop the exploitation and damage that's being done now. She talks about creating guidance structures or alternative structures and practices. So this might be the sort of renewable energy that's proliferating both in major projects and community projects, community-based agriculture, farmers markets, collaborative consumption. I'm sure we could think of hundreds of examples. And a shift in consciousness, and she says this is happening through the new sciences such as complexity theory, systems thinking, plus the recognition of indigenous wisdoms and the different spiritual traditions that all recognise the fundamental interdependence of life. I've just put a couple of quotes from Joanna Macy to give a sense of her, because I'm going to spend most of the time talking about the ritual. She says, the most remarkable feature of this historical moment on Earth is not that we are on the way to destroying the world. We've actually been on the way for quite a while. It is that we're beginning to wake up as from a millennia-long sleep to a whole new relationship to our world, to ourselves and each other. She also talks about these being uncertain times, and there's no certainty in the Great Turning. We don't know what's going to unfold. But she talks about the power of confronting this uncertainty, and she says, insisting on belief in a positive outcome puts blinders on us and burdens the heart. We might manage to convince ourselves that everything will surely turn out all right, but would such happy assurances elicit our greatest courage and creativity? And I personally find that a really encouraging quote, because I think courage is a quality that we really need now. So Joanna Macy is also a practitioner, and I was lucky enough as part of with my student funding to go to the Redwood Forest south of San Francisco and do a 10-day intensive with her. And while I was doing the intensive, I realised that it was actually a training, and that there was a hope that we would return to our communities and run workshops in what's called the Work That Reconnects. And the Work That Reconnects is a cycle. It's often run over 2 days, or it can be a day workshop, which has the elements of beginning with gratitude, honouring our pain for the world, seeing with new eyes, and going forth. So I'm going to talk to you, or read you a story about the Truth Mandala, which is an aspect of honouring our pain for the world. But before that, I just sort of I'd like to set up the workshop. So imagine there's 20 of us, we've all come in together, we're sitting in a circle, we've introduced ourselves, each of us has brought an object to express our gratitude and connection for the world. So we might have flowers, rocks, trees, photos. And then often I'll set up gratitude by drawing on Lunig, who I find is just so poignant. And one of his poems that I often read is this one. We rejoice and give thanks for earthworms, bees, ladybirds and broody hens, for humans tending their gardens, talking to animals, cleaning their homes and singing to themselves, for the rising of the sap, the fragrance of growth, the invention of the wheelbarrow, and the existence of the teapot. We give thanks. And then other people might offer their own thoughts of gratitude. So after spending an hour or so on processing gratitude in different ways, we'll have morning tea, and by that time people will have started to get to know each other a bit of sense of trust may be being generated in the group. And so then we come to the Truth Mandala. So the Truth Mandala is a name for a ritual that is designed to break down the social barriers that prevent us from talking about how we feel about the state of the planet and the other things that concern us deeply. It provides the opportunity to speak openly about how it feels to be living during this time. Because the Truth Mandala enables people to move beyond their usual comfort zone, it isn't common practice in our society. So, I remind myself of this as I look around the room of men and women ranging in age from their early 20s to their 70s, seated in a tightly formed circle. I guide the group through a practice called breathing through. This is a breath meditation we can be used to be present with the feelings that come up for us during the Truth Mandala. It's a useful practice to use at any time when we're feeling suffering, where we can breathe the pain in, but then breathe it out again so that we're not holding on to it. This enables you to be with your feelings but not to get stuck in them. Joanna describes this as an act of dropping our defences and says it's radical because, in contradiction to our usual responses of closing down or denying what we're seeing or feeling, we can connect more fully with the pain. So we practice breathing through, and then I walk into the middle of the circle and I say, imagine the circle's divided into 4 quadrants. In the first quadrant, I'm going to place this stick. This stick represents our anger. The anger that we may feel, the fury and outrage that it has come to this, that such injustice and pain is being inflicted in our world. I then take some leaves. These leaves represent our sorrow and our grief for the losses that are happening in our lives and our world, the landscapes, the cultures, the languages, the beings, our hope. I then take a stone, feeling the cool solidity of it in my hand. This stone represents our fear, the fear that is different for each one of us, but it's a fear for what's happening in our lives and our world. This is how our heart feels when we're afraid, tight, contracted, hard. In this quadrant, we speak our fear. I then take a bowl. This bowl represents our emptiness, our sense of being overwhelmed and our powerlessness, our confusion, our not knowing, our hunger for what is missing. I also place a cushion in the centre of the circle, and this is where someone might come to share a poem, a song, a feeling that's not necessarily expressed through the other 4 symbols. And then I return to my place in the circle and I say to the group who are present, you're invited to enter the Truth Mandala and express your feelings with the help of the objects. It's okay if you don't want to enter the circle, it's okay if you want to enter several times. You can move between the objects. The important guideline is that the Truth Mandala isn't a place for dialogue or a soapbox or an opportunity to admonish or persuade others of your point of view. It's a place to speak from your heart and to know that you will be heard with respect. When someone enters the Truth Mandala and speaks, we listen in silence, and as we return to the circle, we say, we hear you, we are with you. And then I say, so where is hope? Well, hope is the very ground of this mandala. To speak our truth does not deny hope, it can enrich and strengthen it. I move to each symbol and hold it up and say, it's important to remember what underlies the emotions represented by these objects. When anger is being expressed, what you're hearing is a passion for justice. When you hear sorrow, know that what is being expressed is love, for we mourn what we love. When you are hearing fear, know that fear is evidence of our capacity for courage. And the emptiness that is expressed creates the space that is needed to allow the new to arise. I dedicate this ritual to the welfare of all beings, and then I say, let the Truth Mandala begin. I notice some shuffling to my left as Margaret moves in and sits by the stick. She raises it to her chest. There is a long pause before she speaks, and when she does, her voice quivers. I have 3 young children, and I don't know what the future holds for them. It's never been so uncertain. She flails one arm in the air and her voice becomes stronger. I do as much as I can. I write letters to the paper, I grow veggies, I have rainwater tanks and solar panels. I'm always agitating for change at the school. We've started a garden, a climate change group. I'm involved in so many different things, I'm not even there for my children half the time. She grips the stick firmly with both hands and her voice is infused with anger. And do all these things make a difference? How can I look my children in the eye and tell them we'll all be leaving the world a better place? Can't we see we're jeopardising our children's future, their birthright? She returns the stick to the floor and reaches for the bowl, cradling it in her lap. What do I do? She looks around the group. What am I meant to do? It's hard when someone asks a question of the group like that. Our impulse is to answer, to help, but the ritual is about listening and accepting, not discussing and debating. I see people nodding their heads, acknowledging Marg's question and her pain. I just keep going, she says. I don't give up. I show my kids that we don't give up. She puts the bowl down and moves slowly back to her place. I lead the group in saying, we hear you, we are with you. Both Sasha and Michael start to move at the same time. Michael beckons to Sasha, who enters the circle and sits by the leaves. Her head is bowed as she runs them through her fingers. She looks up. I've decided not to have children, she states, and I see looks of consternation pass over some faces. I'm 26, I want children, but I can't bring a child into this world. She sniffs and I see a wash of tears on her cheeks. She barely whispers, it hurts, I ache. She clutches her belly and bends her head to the floor. I notice the tissues being passed around the circle as she moves back to her place. We hear you, we are with you. A moment later, Michael crawls into the circle and kneels on the cushion. I nearly didn't come today, he says, his voice shaking. I've given up. I can't bear to say it, but it's true. He looks at the objects and takes the stone. I've run out of hope for us to get our shit together in time. So what do I do now? Hunker down and work on my farm and live from day to day? But where do I get the hope to plant the seeds for the next crop? And what's the use now? I'm an organic farmer and my neighbours are planting GM crops. He grabs the stick and squeezes it with both hands. And that's just me. Look at what's happening to farmers all over our country, all over the world, forced off their land, seeing it poisoned, their crops mutating. I never thought I'd say this. I've lost hope. His body heaves as he sobs. I feel my chest tighten and a panic sensation sweeps through me. Michael is a stalwart of activism in our community. Where is hope if he has none? I remember the breathing through meditation, allow myself to feel that panic and then to breathe it out. I need to do this a few times before I feel that I can just hear Michael without my reactions affecting me so much. Gradually his sobs lessen in intensity and he sits still and silent. He exhales loudly several times and raising his head looks around the circle, smiling gently. There, I've said it. And the funny thing is, you're right. There is hope here in this circle. I feel like one of my fields after the rain. Thank you. We hear you. We are with you. The air in the room feels dense. I wonder how people are going with this process. Remember to practice breathing through, I say, and notice a few people taking deep breaths. I just need to condense this. Sonia reaches into the circle and takes the cushion and hugs it to her chest. Isn't she going to enter the circle? Does it matter? Do I need to say anything? She then moves slightly into the centre and draws all the objects close to her. She places the stone on the cushion saying, I take this stone and speak of my fear for all the species that are becoming extinct. Sprinkling leaves over the stone, she says, I scatter these leaves for my sorrow that we don't care enough to stop it. She places the bowl upside down on the stone. Enough of being paralysed and inhibited by fear. I am no longer ruled by it. Taking the stick, she stands up and says, I claim my right to speak out for the voiceless. I refuse to be silenced any longer. She tosses her head and smiles at the group. You'll be hearing me roar. One by one, each person enters the circle. Tanya doesn't speak at all. She takes each object in turn, closing her eyes for a moment as she holds them and returns to her place. Martin talks about the difficulty of being a man who tries to talk openly about his feelings and how this causes him to be ostracised and labelled as crazy. Jake, an older man, weeps as he expresses his fears of time running out, his time and time for humanity. Ali speaks of her anger about uranium mining and the proliferation of nuclear power despite what happened in Fukushima. Milosh fills the bowl with leaves and mourns the utter incomprehensible stupidity of humans for causing Earth's sixth great extinction. The gaps between people entering the circle begins to lengthen. I sense the truth mandala has almost run its course and ask if anyone else would like to enter the circle. The story continues, but then I'll just finish it so we don't close without an end to the story. So as we come to the end, I say the truth mandala has now ended. Let us honour the truths that have been spoken. Truth-telling is like oxygen. It enlivens us. Without it, we grow confused and numb. It is also a homecoming, bringing us back to powerful connections and our own authority. We stand and I nod to Jude, who's leading us in a dance. I learnt this dance recently and thought its joyful clapping, finger clicking and foot stomping would be a fitting way to leave the truth mandala. I look around the circle and see people laughing and smiling as they place their hands on each other's shoulders in the first steps of a dance. I feel grateful and honoured to be with such a group of people who've just bared their souls to each other and communally plumbed their grief. The rest of the day continues. We move into seeing with new eyes, which is about recognising that we can only feel such pain for the world because of our sense of interconnectedness. Then in the final session of the day, we talk about going forth. When each person speaks about their reflection on the day, Moira observes how soft and clear everyone's face seems. I can see what she means as I look around the group, and I notice the ripening friendships forming between people. Sylvia expresses appreciation to the group for their openness and courage in sharing their innermost selves so generously. Sasha says she's spoken aloud things in the group she's never uttered before, and that this has somehow given her a renewal of hope. Jake thanks the young people present for being brave enough to confront the mess his generation has made for them and apologises that they even need to be in this situation. We are lingering and the warmth between the group is palpable. I'm about to close the workshop when Marg sums up the mood. I wasn't sure about coming today and whether I was up to participating in this, but I'm so glad I came. Thank you everybody. I came in wearing lead boots and now I'm leaving on tiptoes. Let's try to get to that.